Welcome back, parents. You're listening to DIY Behavior.
Thanks for checking it out. Now, enjoy this episode.
How do I get my kid to stop screaming and to have them politely ask for it? Now, screaming, whining, tantruming, crying, these are interchangeable, right? No matter what you call it, it's a problem behavior. So in this episode, we're going to identify them as a problem behavior. If your kid is engaging in problem behavior instead of doing the more appropriate behavior, differential reinforcement is for you. All right, so what is differential reinforcement? It's a behavior change strategy that states, by rewarding you for doing the appropriate behavior and withholding the reward when you do the problem behavior, that in turn does two things. A, it increases the appropriate behavior, and B, it decreases the problem behavior. Now, I know if you're listening to this as a parent, you're like, duh, but where a lot of parents go wrong is how they prompt their kid to engage in appropriate behavior. Now, differential reinforcement basically, again, it just means that I'm reward you for doing what you need to do, and I'm not giving you the reward when you engage in a problem behavior. But what most parents do is when they see or when that kid engages in the whining or the screaming or the crying, they immediately provide some sort of attention or they vocally acknowledge the behavior. If your kid starts whining, I see this all the time where the parent jump in like, hey, we don't get that by doing this. How do we act like a big boy? How do we act like a big girl? And in turn, the kid just amplifies or escalates. Essentially, that added attention that the parent provides to, again, their intention is to try to help them to do the more appropriate response, but that attention that they provide just adds fuel to the fire. So for my parents listening to this and saying like, wow, that happens all the time, just know you're not alone. There's millions of other parents out there who goes through this. But you may be asking yourself, so how do I help my kid engage in a more appropriate response rather than the problem behavior without adding fuel to the fire? Great question. Number one thing that you need to do immediately, starting today, is if you need to provide attention, provide the most minimal attention as possible, meaning neutral tone. Parents typically raise their voice when their kiddo is screaming, crying, tantruming, so forth and so on. It's human nature to try to escalate then. The number one thing that you can do as a parent to make sure that you don't provide too much attention is to, when you give them the words of how to get what they're asking for, is to use a neutral tone. Avoid raising your voice. Second, avoid as much eye contact as possible. What a lot of parents don't realize that by me looking at you, why are you screaming, crying, and doing all this stuff, I'm providing some sort of attention to you. Now, if you have the question of what's wrong with providing attention while my kid is screaming, crying, yelling, just know that attention can become a reward for your kiddo. It can be, oh, I'm getting this attention for engaging in this behavior. By you providing minimal eye contact and a neutral tone, that shows your kid that you're not getting this high attention for this bad behavior. But when you do the more appropriate response, now I'm going to give you the most attention possible with the eye contact, with an excited tone. So the attention aspect, and when you're helping your kiddo not engage in appropriate behavior, but to engage in the more appropriate response, the attention is a crucial element into teaching them to be more independent with this. A lot of parents ask like, my kid just always screaming, even though I tell them this is how you get what you want. You politely ask, but how you tell them is the most important thing. So let's say if your kid starts screaming, yelling, crying, instead of politely asking for it, in a neutral tone, minimal eye contact, you could just simply say, you can ask for it. Or you can give them exact words to say, but in a neutral tone. You can say, can I have cracker? You can say, mommy, I need help. Daddy, can we go outside? And once your kid echoes you, once your kid say what you just told them to do, then you provide the reward. But over time, what you're doing is you're creating a history and showing that your kid that you do have two choices. You can engage in this problem behavior or you can engage in an appropriate response. But the reward will only be given for the appropriate response. And it's human nature that when we have two decisions, when we have two behaviors that we can engage in, we're going to naturally choose the behavior that's going to result in the most reward. It's the same reason why if we have a stranger come in the elevator and we have someone else who we know come in the elevator, we're going to choose to talk to the person that we know. Why? Because they're going to give me more social reinforcement. So same thing here. When your kiddo is screaming and crying and you're not rewarding them, but you're rewarding them in form of attention and you're rewarding them in form of what they want when they engage in a more appropriate response, this communicates to your child that this gets me what I want and this doesn't. It's your classic, I can show you better. I can show you better than I can tell you, okay? So if this is done correctly, over time, your kiddo will ask for things rather than the whining, the screaming, the crying, the tantruming, because asking them gets what they want and the problem behavior never does.
All right, that's my time. The number one question to ask yourself when it comes to your kids' behavior is, how can I set them up for success? Until next time, parents.